And welcome inside the Backstage Pass, almost the TGIF version. That's tomorrow coming up there, too. Of course, no shows. We'll be doing some football just north of the Piney Woods here in Texas, too, with Hampshire Finette taking on the Jasper Bulldogs. Kick off at 7:30 tomorrow night. The Sports Guys Podcast.com is a place to be if you love football, you love music, and everything else out there. And our friends at KKTC True Country 99.9, and, of course, out there, WSM Radio every Sunday morning from 5:30 to 6 a.m. And, of course, the WSM Radio app and WSM Radio.com. Brennan Morrill here, and of course our team is out there working diligently to get ready for what could be exciting over these next few months. No big announcements yet, but some things we're working on behind the scenes. And pleased to welcome in here to the show one of my favorite guys. We've been trying to put this together for a while. Great songwriter, and he's got a new book out. Tim James to the show. Tim, what are you doing, brother?
Hey, Brandon. Oh, man, I'm just, hanging like a hair in a biscuit, buddy.
I love that saying. That'd be a great country song. Has anybody written that? I'd love to. That'd be a good country song.
No, but we should. Hanging like a rusty biscuit. But it's all
I would
good,
love
man.
that. Hey, let's talk about just your experience. You've been around this thing a long time, and I mentioned, hit songwriter. You've done a lot. You got the cut we were talking about there before the show started on George Strait's record too. Just talk about, for the people that may not know Tim James as well as I do, talk about this, the past experience and just growing up in this thing called music.
Man, I'll give you the edited version so your listeners don't go. Is there a snooze alarm on that story? I was born in a little town outside of Nashville called Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And then I kind of flunked out. I got kicked out of one college and flunked out of another. And me and academics did not get along. So I moved to LA. I'd never been on a plane. I went to LA and thought, my gosh, what am I doing out here? I was going to stay 6 months. I stayed 12 years. My first Mulligan wife was an actress. And I would sit around and pick a guitar and sing. And she was like, you're really good at that. I don't know why you're not trying to do that for a living. And I was in pharmaceutical sales. It's not selling weed on the corner, as my friends back in Tennessee said. I sold Robitussin for A.H. Robbins without a college degree, but nonetheless, that's another story. And she would say, man, you're good at this. And so I put a band together, started playing, and traveled up and down the West Coast. I played a bunch of gigs in the Valley, there in L.A. And then I started making trips back home. And man, same as everybody else, I got shot down so many times I can't count them. And then I signed a publishing deal. All songs, for your listeners, all songs have publishers. Anything that's copywritten has a publisher. And so I signed with a small publishing company that Don Schlitz owned. Don wrote The Gambler, When You Say Nothing at All, and all these great songs. And he signed me. And dude, I was 30, probably 7. And after a year and a half, they decided they were going to close down. And so now I'm staring at 40 going, what in the world am I going to do with my life? And then I'd met some dudes, and we went to a Titans football game. It was guys that are all in the business still to this day. And they said, man, we know somebody that's starting a pub company and they're looking to sign some writers. And I was like, send me their way. Turns out it was Toby Keith and his manager, TK Kimbrell, started a small publishing company. They signed me, man. I was there for about, probably 4 or 5 months, just writing song after song after song. I had written a song with my friend Rand Bishop called My List, and they played it for Toby, and Toby was very, when it came to recording, man, he kind of went with his gut all the time. So he heard it, he flew in like 2 weeks later, cut a record, put it on there. After 2 singles, the first single was, I think it was I Want to Talk About Me. The second one, I'm Just Talking About Tonight. And then 9/11 happened, and the head of the label said, man, you need to put this song out. So he put that song out, and man, it went number 1. It was number 1 for 5 weeks and has since been on 11 million albums, because the first album sold 3, Greatest Hits 1 sold 3, Greatest Hits 2. So it's sort of been the gift that keeps on giving. But that was my entry into the music business, and that was a good one. And then I just stayed with it, Brandon. I've since had number 1 with Strait. I wrote Give It All We Got Tonight for George Strait, and I wrote.
Well, we lost him there for a second. A little technical difficulties there too here. But again, the Sports Guys Podcast.com and KKTC True Country 99.9. Just a tremendous songwriter too. A lot of great songs that Tim has written in his catalog too at the same time. And of course, to reconnect with him, he's got a new book out there too. We'll tell you what, we'll take a time out, see if we can reconnect with Tim James. Here it is, the Backstage Pass. Powered by the Sports Guys Podcast.com and presented by our friends over at the Caden Gordon Show. Today's best country music out there too as well. And be sure to give him a follow. The CadenGordonShow.com. Today's best country mix. More to come here too on the Backstage Pass, KKGC, True Country 99.9. And our friends, of course, WSM Radio, the home of the Grand Ole Opry, every Sunday morning from 5:30 to 6 a.m. Hope to reconnect with Tim James coming back after this timeout.
The Caden Gordon Show. Today's best country mix is a 2-hour show playing independent and mainstream country music you know and love. Be sure to check it out at thecadengordonshow.com for more information on the show.
Go behind the scenes with some of the biggest artists in music today with the Backstage Pass, powered by the SportsGuysPodcast.com. Join Brandon Morrill and his co-host Alan Price as they talk to rising stars and legends about their music careers. Listen to their latest tracks and learn fun facts about the men and women behind the music you love. And be sure to tune into the Backstage Pass powered by the SportsGuysPodcast.com each and every Sunday morning from 5:30 to 6 a.m. on your home for the Grand Ole Opry, AM 650 WSM. And we took a little break there. Got Tim back here on the show. The technical difficulties there too, but we just bear with it, take a break, and that's how broadcasting works. Is when it's live, guess what? It's live. But I've been doing this for 30 years, so at the same time, we love to reconnect there too and have some segues in and out of those things out there too. And of course, this week's guest on WSM, you might remember him. He had a show called Mind of Mencia back on the Comedy Channel. Carlos Mencia, the great comedian, is going to join us this week on WSM, the home of the Opry, this Sunday, 5:30 a.m. to 6 a.m. iHeartRadio, WSMRadio.com, and of course the WSM radio app. He's got a residency out in Las Vegas now at Harrah's out there too. We'll be talking a lot about that and just how much comedy has changed over the past 20 years since he's been doing that since the 90s up into today. Back here with Tim James on the show. You were mentioning about all the great songs, signing that deal with the publishing company and the list, and of course the cuts with George Strait, and then things just kind of took off there. And I've often wondered that too. You hit a point in your life and you say to yourself, man, I've turned 40, I've turned 42, and you've just been told no so many times, but you keep persevering and you keep going. What was the motivation like behind that too? Because you're a great songwriter, and it's just about being heard and getting your content heard. And of course, getting some lucky breaks along the way, right?
I think all those things are true. What motivated me was what you just said. No. Somebody said, man, you can't do it. I mean, again, I was 40 when my list was number one. And most of the people that had success had it when they were much younger, and they were either out of the game or on their way out of the game, or they never had success at all. So, yeah, I tried my best to let no and fear. I mean, it sounds crazy, but when I before I ever had a hit song, in between pub deals, I was painting houses. Mm-hmm. And man, it gets hell hot in Tennessee, and I did not want to go back to painting houses. So I let that kind of motivate me. And once I had a number one song, man, I just, I wrote with Mike Reed one day, and Mike Reed, it's in my book. Mike said, I said, what's the secret to all this? And Mike Reed said, the secret is to show up for work. And I went, you know what, man, if that guy says it, I'm going to show up. So after I had a number one song, I bet I wrote, God, I couldn't even count them, the number of songs I wrote over the next 10 years. And I got one on, like you had mentioned, I'm lucky to have one on the new Strait record, one on the new Stapleton record. And those songs are 15 years old. So that's just a testament to what I was, saying. Like, dude, I just showed up for work. I kept showing up. And granted, Stapleton has had an effect on my career. But, yeah, man, I don't – the word no just made me – well, I'll sit back and watch.
That's a word that, like I said, I can take 9 of those till I get to one yes, at the same time. And I'm right there with you, too, scratching, digging, and clawing to get to the top there, too. And we've done that, WSM Radio. It's not what you do to get there. It's what you do when you get there to maintain it. I always say, too, one of those things comes around the corner. But, at the same time, like I said, you keep working, you keep putting yourself out there, and good things will happen to those. I've just happened to have tremendous faith along the way, and including a lady tuning in named Sherry Cranford, who's been a huge, huge rock in my life and, of course, my show, and just a tremendous lady we've got going on who put all this together, and who's been my publicist now for about 3 years out there too, here for the Backstage Pass. Hey, talk about your the book. I can't wait to read it. I'm always looking to pick up just good literature out there to educate myself, more, and get a hold of someone else's life and kind of shape mine. And you mentioned we talked about, the word no and what it means, but the motivation behind it, the book, and where people can find it. And looking forward to reading a copy myself too.
Oh man, I appreciate that. I was playing the Bluebird, Brandon, about 8 years ago. At the time, I was happily married. I got 2 kids. I kind of felt like, man, I've got life by the cojones. I thought everything is so like the stars must have lined up. I'd had 2 #1 songs. I got a Grammy Award. Well, when you get I got a Grammy for being on a Stapleton record. And the song was called Either Way, but the song was on From a Room Volume 1. So you get a Grammy certificate. But I got news for you, dude. If you're selling Robitussin 25 years prior, I say, I won a Grammy. And so everything was hunky-dory. I played the Bluebird. I was telling my story about how I grew up in Murfreesboro, which is 25 miles from Nashville. But yet I moved to LA. I was in pharmaceutical sales, blah, 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 moved home. Then I get a hit song. She just said, man, your story is fascinating. You should write about it. So I sat down, I started writing. I did not have really the intention of writing a book. I just kind of thought I'm going to noodle my story down. And the more I wrote, work begets work. So I just kept doing it, kept writing. And the book is called Going Crazy, Left Foot, Right Foot, Breathe. Because since the inception of the book, I have been through a second divorce, and I have not my choosing, but I have 2 kids. My older brother died 2.5 years ago. I've been through the ringer, and the book runs the gamut. So it starts again when, man, life is fantastic. And then I go through everything. So really, if I'm being transparent with you, the book deals with mental health as much as anything. It deals with men's mental health, which we're so, it's so taboo to talk about. Me in the book, I say, look, man, I have been low enough to play handball with the curb. And I always said to myself, if I can just get up the next day and left foot, right foot, breathe, if that's my mantra, then it's somehow I'll figure out a way to get through it. And that's what I did. I wrote it. I finished it about 2 years ago. And then I had a lady, Beth Werner, who is in New York. She helped me publish it. And it's out there, man. I mean, it's selling some copies. I think it's not everybody, the majority of people that read it said, man, I read it in one sitting. Like I couldn't put it down. So, that's up to the consumer to decide. But I enjoyed the book, and I'm proud of it.
Well, I tell you what, you send me a copy, I will read that thing cover to cover and probably do it in one sitting. I would love to read that too, because I always want to educate myself and just get better and do what's important. You mentioned something there that really kind of struck a nerve in a good way for me. We were talking a little bit before the show and how much, and I neglect it too, but we all do when it comes down to it. You eat the bad foods. Of course, now we're like, we'll have a couple of cheat days. But, somebody said something to me too, and I have a day job out there too. They're like, you can work your life away and you can make $1 and make a living, but you can't forget to make a life. And I think it was a lyric of a song, and I'm trying to remember actually who sang that out there too, but it was a country song that was out there. Of course, what isn't a country song that has those logos and those lines in it too at the same time? But, I'm kind of doing that more now. I want to just kind of make that life with my family, my wife, my little girl. And at the same time, that make a living, it's always out there. Money, we can go find it where we want to find it, depending on what profession you're in. But self-care is so important. And somebody brought this up to me. If you don't have self-care, you can't do the things that you want to do. And I'll just tell you this, being back in the gym, it sucks getting up at 4:30 in the morning. But when I'm there at 5 o'clock and I'm actually into it and I finish it by 6 or 6:15 and then go to work for the day and of course come home, do these shows and then travel the way that I travel with my schedule, self-care is so important. Elaborate on that, just because if you don't have that right mental focus, as the book talks about, if people don't have self-care, how can they go on about their lives and do everything else?
I don't think you can. I mean, you and I talked about that previous to this starting. Like I have, and again, this is detailed in the book. I always have been a fitness guy. So, most people, even when I lived in LA, I was part of a group of guys that belonged to the Hollywood YMCA, and we all played basketball. And basketball was sort of my release. I played super small college ball. As my friend said, you played, but they never even washed your jersey. But I played and I stayed with it. When I went to LA, I met all these guys. Dude, I mean, I met some of my good friends became super famous. Like I went to this game and I got in this pickup basketball game, and it was Woody Harrelson, George Clooney, Dennis Miller. And then I went to the Hollywood YMCA, and my buddy Danny Carey, who's a drummer in a band called Tool. My friends have done extremely well. The only reason I say that is because those guys were the guys that encouraged me to say, look, man, do what you love. Life's short. But the self-care part of it, for me, and everybody's different, whether yours is spirituality or whatever it may be. Mine is physical fitness because, as you kind of said, man, I can be overloaded here. And if I get there and I really look like the Unabomber when I'm at the gym, like this is over my head, you know, and I walk around and nobody, you know, some people will say, oh, hey, Tim, but for the most part, I'm in there to get it done. And I'll spend an hour and 15, hour and 30. I'm going when I leave here because that's my release. But I'm a big fan of whatever it may be, yoga or meditation, anything that allows you to have some me time. Because as you said, you can't function in a relationship. You can't function as you can't function as a business professional if you're not taking care of yourself.
That's a good point. Like I said, and I feel the difference. You know, it's amazing how you can just get back in there and do the little things, the little exercises that matter, the stretching, all the important stuff out there, you know, the calisthenics, and of course, the weightlifting, the cardio, and just kind of put it all together. And that's just something that I've always done had done it before, dropped off, became a dad. Life happens. The old slogan, that's the way it goes. And then, of course, you just kind of find your way back to what you miss. And now I enjoy getting up as my wife says, you're crazy. Well, you know, 4:30 in the morning, it rings. And guess what? It's going to ring whether you like it or not. You get in there, you take care of yourself, and then you go take care of your other responsibilities throughout the day. Well, I tell you what, we got to have you play a couple, and I get lost in the conversation. Sometimes we forget to play the music here on the show. It's just the way it goes. When it comes down to it, I can talk people's ears off. People know that. That's why I was a radio guy for 30 years, same time. But a lot of songs you can pick through your catalog, and people can hear a lot of the great work out there that you've done. Where would you like to start for the first performance?
Man, I'll just play a little bit of a couple things, but what happened with this song was, man, I was riding with my buddy and my dad had a heart attack. And I was like, man, I was always a list guy. I wrote down things to do. And I was like, my list is all sort of jacked up. I need to sort of revamp that and make it important. So he's a super talented writer, but he was kind of playing that little leg. Under no brass paperweight, it's my list of things to do today. Go to the bank and the hardware store, put a new lock on the cellar door. I cross them off as I get them done. When the sun has set, there's still more than a few things left. Haven't got to yet. I ain't go for a walk, say a little prayer and take a deep breath. Mountain air, put on my glove, play some catch. It's time I made time for that. Wade the shore and cast the line. Look up a long lost friend of mine, sit on the porch, give my girl a kiss. Start living, it's the next thing on my list. Wouldn't change the course of fate if cutting the grass just had a way. 'Cause I got more important things, like pushing my kid on a backyard swing. I won't break my back for $1 million. Can't take to my grave. Why put off for tomorrow what I could get done today? Like go for a walk, say a little prayer and take a deep breath. Mountain air, put on my glove, play some catch. It's time, made time for that. Wade the shore and cast the line. Look up a long lost friend of mine, sit on the porch, give my girl a kiss. Start living, it's the next thing on my list.
There's Tim James right there, the hit song, The List, out there too. We all make one at some point in our lives, good or bad. And you know what? That turned out to be one of the most successful songs in country music. Let me tell you what, we'll take a quick time out here. Of course, coming back, another performance, and we'll have a little rapid fire for Tim too. Some Nashville questions thrown in there too at the same time, like favorite restaurants. He mentioned fitness, some things to do in downtime and stuff like that too. So a lot of cool things to get to. If you guys have any questions out there, you can leave them in the comment box. And of course, we're live on the sportsguyspodcast.com and of course, YouTube channel and everywhere you guys can find the show out there, wherever you find your podcast too. Don't forget this week's guest, Carlos Mencia on WSM Radio this Sunday morning, 5:30 a.m. to 6 a.m. You'll catch one of the funniest guys in the business and what he's been up to over the last few months out there in Las Vegas, Nevada. Back in a flash here, a word from our sponsors. Stay tuned.
The Caden Gordon Show, today's best country mix, is a 2-hour show playing independent and mainstream country music you know and love. Be sure to check it out at thecadengordonshow.com for more information on the show.
Go behind the scenes with some of the biggest artists in music today with the Backstage Pass, powered by the SportsGuysPodcast.com. Join Brandon Morrill and his co-host Alan Price as they talk to rising stars and legends about their music careers. Listen to their latest tracks and learn fun facts about the men and women behind the music you love. And be sure to tune into the Backstage Pass, powered by the SportsGuysPodcast.com each and every Sunday morning from 5:30 to 6 a.m. on your home for the Grand Ole Opry, AM 650 WSM. And of course, a great guest coming up over the next few weeks. Carlos Mencia coming up this weekend on Sunday. And then a good one coming up next week. She's putting out a new album, too, and making a huge name for herself right there. She's in that women's category of strong country singers out there. Megan Patrick will be on with us coming up next week here on WSM Radio, the home of the Grand Ole Opry. And if you haven't got your tickets yet, guess what? Opry.com. Every time I go, I buy them, and it's always fun to do that, too. And, of course, lately I haven't had to buy them, which is a good thing because we do a radio show. But at the same time, if you buy them, Opry.com out there doing the same time. And our friends at KKTC True Country 99.9. Back here with hit songwriter Tim James on the show. We talked about the book and a lot of everything else there too. And, just mental health. I wanted to ask you about that because, you came up during a time, with that publishing company, with Toby, and just putting out all these great songs. And you mentioned the cuts on the George Strait records. But, man, I can't remember a time, Tim, where it's just strong. I mean, right now, both male and female in country music, everybody's got something to say. They've got a great song to sing from the great writers like yourself too. And, male, female categories. Just give me the overall kind of health of country music right now, and so many great artists out there, doing their thing. Thoughts on that?
Man, I believe it's become so much more diverse, Brandon. It's crazy. Like, Shabuzi had the biggest global song of the year. But I think the country music as a whole is really kicking butt. I mean, you got, Post Malone just put out a country record, and it's just on fire. I think whether people deem that or Shabuzi as country music is slightly irrelevant to me. I heard a friend of mine say, he had a good point one time. We're sitting around talking about when Garth did that Chris Gaines record. Mm-hmm. And my buddy and I, this was many, many years ago, we're sitting there just, running him down. Like, why in the hell would that guy do blah, 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 blah. And he finally stopped and looked at me and said, man, we are spending energy on a guy that could do us nothing but good. I mean, if you get a Chris Gaines cut, you're laughing, or you get a Garth cut, you're laughing. So, whether I like the Post Malone record, dude, if I had a song on there, I'd be like, I love that guy. So I think we're in a good place. Mm-hmm. I would say it's probably more competitive than it's ever been in terms of being a writer. But, hey, man, again, as long as people are still cutting and you're doing what you love, what else is there?
There's a little bit of everything. It's a variety's a spice of life, I say, for country music now these days, because there's something out there for everybody. And just because you don't listen to it doesn't mean somebody else doesn't like it when it comes out there, too. I can tell you, I put on stuff that I like on playlists, and things such as The List and that 90s country, what I came up in, that's just my era, if you will, too. And I think that's starting to make a little bit of a comeback, too. And I talk to people about, the success that those songs were, because the minute you heard the first few notes of those songs and the instrumentation that hit, you're like, man, that's Brooks and Dunn, that's George Strait, that's Toby Keith, that's anybody in the 90s. And, of course, a little bit of that now, but I think that times have changed. People have to get used to change. And, of course, the songs out there, too, you either like it or you find an artist that you really attach yourself to that can really tell just good storytelling through the songs out there, too, at the same time. And I love that from that, especially that female perspective now. You look at how Lainey Wilson has won on these award shows, and Megan Maroney and Ashley Cook and Hannah Ellis, the names, Priscilla Block, these names go on and on. It's good to see the females getting their kind of due diligence. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think you're right. Lainey Wilson has kind of led the way, and that sort of opened the door for Megan Maroney and all these other people. But dude, I mean, again, if you listen to her music, you go, that's so good. Like, there's not a stinker on that record. I haven't listened to the new one. The previous record, it's just a good record. There's tons of good songs in there. So yeah, she's crushing it. I think there's a lot of up and coming females that are going to make a difference. And for a while, as you know, man, that was not happening. I mean, old guys were shutting girls out, and I was like, dang. But yeah, I think they're absolutely a major player in the game now.
They sure are too, no doubt about it. And I love it. And I think they're getting that recognition they deserve to at the same time. All right, before I have a little fun, what's next performance-wise? I want to hear a little more.
Oh, man. Well, speaking of, every time I played this song and I played the opening song, people, I do corporate events all the time. I'm going to, I know I'm going somewhere in the next couple of weeks, but if I play that at these events and I sing the first line, they called him crazy when they started out. Inevitably, people go, oh, said 17's too young to know what love's about. They've been together 58 years now. That's crazy. He brought home $67 a week. Bought a little 2-bedroom house on Maple Street, where she blessed him with 6 more mouths to feed. That's crazy. Just ask him how he did it. You say pull up a seat. It'll only take a minute to tell you everything. Be your best friend, tell the truth. Don't overuse I love you. Go to work, do your best, and don't outsmart your common sense. Never let you pray and knees get lazy. Love like crazy. They called him crazy when he quit his job. Said them on computers, boy, they'll never take off. He sold his one-man shop to Microsoft. They paid like crazy. Just ask him how he made it. He'll tell you faith and sweat. The heart of a faithful woman could never let him forget. Be your best friend, tell the truth. Overuse I love you. Go to work, do your best, and don't outsmart your common sense. Never let you pray and knees get lazy. And love like crazy. Always treat your woman like a lady. Never got too old to call her baby. Never let your praying knees get lazy. And love like crazy. They called him crazy when they started out. They've been together 58 years now. Ain't that crazy?
One of my favorite songs, no doubt. Lee Brice brought that to new heights too. With back here with hit songwriter Tim James. Of course, the book's out there too, and can't wait to read that copy and have a lot of fun with that. And appreciate you being here. All right, let's talk some Nashville stuff here. You mentioned about fitness when you're not doing the music side of things, but I want to know places to eat. Like, I still have at least 2 cheat days for me during the week. It's like burgers and pizza. I've not found a good pizza joint there yet in Nashville. Now, there's some burger joints been pretty good there for a while, but I wanted to ask you your favorite places to eat.
Man, I don't eat a ton of pizzas, so I don't know. But the Southern, which is downtown, is kind of an upscale restaurant, but they serve nothing but Southern food. So, I mean, it's like turnip greens and meatloaf and all that kind of stuff. But it's great. The Southern's great. And then you got the old kind of classic meat and threes like Arnold's. I think they reopened the Pie Wagon. I'd really, to be honest with you, man, the newer things are not my scene. Like, I go to some of the old places, but there's plenty to choose from. I'll tell you that.
Sure is, no doubt. All right, we talked about those great country songs of the '90s, and of course the ones that you had your hand in putting pen to paper on too, no doubt. But was there an artist? I mean, beside we talked about the regulars. I know I'll give you my answer here in just a second, but I know that mine may stun some people. It may not. But was there an artist that or a songwriter back in the '90s that you even look at today and you're saying, man, they're still going strong? It's about, we talked about storytelling and that kind of thing, but is there one that may have not gotten maybe as famous as maybe a George Strait or something like that you would always say, you know what, he or she wrote good songs, or they being a band that you still listen to today, maybe on like any kind of streaming platform?
Yeah, Radney Foster, hands down. He had some success, and I've written with him. He's like a super sweet guy. But that first album was called Del Rio, Texas, 1959. And man, I hunkered down in my 1-bedroom apartment in LA. And if I'm usually overly transparent, but I would take his songs and I would write, try to, use the melody. Oh gosh, I can't remember now that I'm saying. I can't remember the songs, but I would take his songs and listen to them and think, oh my gosh, man, if I could just write something like that. So yeah, he is crazy talented. And I know he's done very well, don't get me wrong. Oh, yeah. But in my mind, that dude was like, he was Garth Brooks.
No doubt. I was going to say mine, Radney Foster, being a Texas guy down here we had on the show very early when I started doing this. A fantastic gentleman. And then one for me that had, one of the biggest songs out there too, and maybe a name people haven't heard in a while. I just talked to him the other day on a little conversation. We'll get him here on the show at some point. A song that really hit back in 2001, 2002, somewhere in there. But the guy's name was Kevin Denny. That's Just Jesse. I love listening to Kevin's music. He's a great songwriter. Sure, you know who I'm talking about there too. It was a big hit for him, and he had some there. But I knew Kevin just always had that talent for songwriting and singing, and I love seeing it too because he's one of the greatest guys in the business.
Yeah, man, he was crazy town. Another one for me, hands down, would be Sons of the Desert.
Oh yes, no doubt.
Like that Drew Womack guy could sing the phone book, but that's the thing, man. You get these guys and they're so talented. I think you kind of got to play the game, man. That's just part of the deal. And these record labels, they're in it for the money. Let's don't kid ourselves.
That's what it comes down to, my friend. Like I said, they don't just sign you for nothing out there too. When you get one of those things, you got to work your, off, just kind of stay in the game, play it and everything out there. And of course, I believe the title of the book, is it Going Crazy? Is that correct?
It is.
All right, Going Crazy. I love that too. And I loved it. Left foot, right foot.
Breathe. There it is. Shameless self-promotion.
A self-promotion right there too. I remember it. I was like, I got the title Going Crazy. I'd love to get a copy of it too, read it, and just put my mental awareness back on everything else too. And that's what life is all about. Left foot, right foot, and breathe a little bit. Going Crazy. Give him a follow out there on social media. Tim James, our guest today on the Backstage Pass, KKTC True Country 99.9, and our friends, of course, WSM Radio, the home of the Grand Ole Opry too. Tim, appreciate the time, my friend. And as we get to Nashville in this RV bus / thing we're coming in, this 38-foot coach, I would love to have you come out, spend some time with us, sing some songs, and just, man, would enjoy meeting you, shaking your hand. Congrats on a great career, and you know what? More success coming your way, too.
Thank you, Brandon. I appreciate you having me. And, yeah, man, when you come to town, give a brother a holler.
We'll do that, too. Maybe we'll work out together. Muscle to muscle there, too. We get to do that. Fitness to fitness, no doubt. Tim James here on the show. Don't forget this weekend, Carlos Mencia on the Backstage Pass, WSM Radio, the spot to be on iHeart, and, of course, 5:30 a.m. to 6 a.m. And if you're not up that early, don't forget WSMradio.com and, of course, the app, the mobile app out there for WSM. And next week, Megan Patrick, October 27th. Looking forward to that, too. And also Joe Nichols making a stop here on the Backstage Pass coming up next week to promote his new album, talk about those hit songs back in the day, too, because one of those guys I love so much is Joe Nichols coming here on the Backstage Pass. And another legend coming back, Michelle Wright. We'll talk about her Christmas song and some new things. You might remember her. Take It Like a Man. Michelle Wright coming here on the show, coming up next week on the Backstage Pass. Until then, take care. God bless. We'll see you soon. KKTC, True Country, 99.9.